Something unprecedented happened because I'm not talking about a B patch or even a C patch. I'm talking about a D patch. Because right now, TFT, people like to say it's 4-dimensional chess, but sometimes you just need the 4th dimension of patches. So they nerfed Volibear and Akali, which were comps that were climbing up during the B patch. And they did that by changing the way Volibear can cheese his first cast, and they're raising Akali's mana, lowering her attack speed, but also reducing her cast time. But have no fear, we're going to cover every single comp that's going to be good on the new D patch. Some people are calling it C patch, some people call it D patch. It depends what you classified the first patch as because it was more of a hotfix. But we're going to cover each and every comp, how to play them, and when to go for them. But let's start out at the top. Crystal Gambit is still really good if you get to 7, and then in the other comp in the S tier, it's going to be Caitlyn, Jayce, Reroll. The one important thing to note about this comp is that really only one person can go for it, and it's a 3-cost reroll comp, and you pretty much want both Jayce and Caitlyn 3-star, so it's a bit of a high roll comp, but if you do hit it, you probably will do really, really well, at least 3rd place, if not more. But despite all this, it doesn't mean there aren't other good, viable comps. In the A tier, we have Kayle Reroll, and then we're going to follow that up with Battle Academia Yuumi. Next up, we have a new comp, which is going to be Duelist Ashe, but with Colossal Udyr. This is a very popular comp that's up and coming. So definitely, if you haven't played this before, play it now because it might be contested starting tomorrow or the day after. After that, we have Juggernaut Ashe, the crew, Kayle Reroll, Soul Fighter, Sorcerer, Smolder plus tanks, Star Guardian, Katarina, and Jhin Reroll. If you have not noticed a pattern yet, all the backline comps such as Ashe, crew, Kayle, Yuumi, comps like that, they all improved a ton because Akali is out of the meta. These comps were unplayable when you have like 3 Akali players every game. But now that she's gone, these comps are back in action because they can't just get sniped for no reason. In the B tier, we have Luchador Volibear. It's still playable. It's not completely garbage or anything. It's just not as good as it once was before. So if you get a good spot for Luchadors, definitely go for it. But don't hard force the comp from the beginning. Snipers are good if you can fast 9. All out Cassante, seen better days, especially after the Akali nerf. I don't see why you would play this. Supreme Cell Darius, if you are going to play Darius, play it with a Kayle, and then Duelist Reroll. Duelist is more focused on the Ashe and the Colossal Udyr. Mentor Flex, Mighty Mech, Gnar, Mentor GP, Wraith, and Protector Akali. These comps leave a little bit more to be desired. But if you do have super duper duper spots, these definitely can be played. But let's get on into the team comps. So starting up at the top, we have Crystal Gambit in the S tier. So nothing has really changed with this comp. You just want to play the 7 Crystal Gambit units plus Braum. You can play Lee Sin or Jarvan in the meantime if you can't get him. You essentially just want to play 7 Crystal Gambit plus Udyr and Braum. If you don't get them yet, you can play Jarvan or Lee Sin in the meantime. And then all you have to do is get Kraken plus Rageblade on Ashe. And then you farm all the Crystal Gambit bonuses and win the game through that. It's really reliant on getting Zyra and the Crystal Gambit emblem, so unless you get that, don't play it. It's kind of a rare comp, but it is one of those Exodia comps out there. Next up, we have is Caitlyn, Jayce, Battle Academia Reroll. This comp is pretty fun. You just play Jayce and Caitlyn, and it's so weird because when you played Katarina before, which is also a Battle Academia comp, they share pretty much every unit. You did this Moses positioning where you split your team left and right. But with Caitlyn, you also want to do that because the way Katarina works is that you want her to focus 2 tanks down and then jump to the backline after that, and this position helps with that. But with Caitlyn, you want to do something very similar where you want to open up the middle of the board so that she could hit their corner unit. So you want to be positioning every single turn. If their carries are on the left-hand side, you want to be on the right. If they're on the right-hand side, you want to be on the left. Just typical opposite positioning, nothing crazy going on there. And then items for Caitlyn is going to be Spear Shojin, Infinity Edge, and Guardbreaker. For Jayce, he's going to be on the same side as your Caitlyn. He likes any of the Bruiser items, Sterix Gauge, Bloodthirster, or Titan's Resolve, and he does really, really, really well if you get an item called Silvermere Dawn. Silvermere Dawn is absolutely bonkers on Jayce. If you don't believe me, we could go to the Explorer tool, type in Jayce, and you'll see here that if you look at his items, as a 3-star, he already averages a 3.44, but with Silvermere Dawn, he averages a 2.04. There aren't many items that jump up a placement that much, and this is just one of them. So they probably need to nerf that in the future, to be honest. I'm actually surprised that they did not touch this comp in the B patch. Why am I even saying B? I meant D as in David, D patch. Because this is one of the other bonkers comps out there apart from Akali and Volibear. Lastly, for Leona, you just want to put any tank items on her, but Even Shroud is pretty nice so that Jayce is next to her and the armor's reduced a little bit. And then if you ever get anti-heal, such as like a red buff or a Morello, you could drop it on Yuumi and put her on the same side as your Caitlyn. But this comp is just a plain and simple 3-cost reroll, really easy comp to. The comp also stabilizes really hard with 2-star units, which can't be said with a lot of other 3-cost rerolls, because normally like with 3-cost rerolls, there's a big gap between the 2 stars and 3 stars. And don't get me wrong, like obviously you want to get both of them to 3-star eventually, but at 2-star, I find that they can compete with a lot of the 4-cost comps out there, and then you just win out once you get them 3-star. So that's one thing that's really good about this comp compared to other 3-cost rerolls in the past. But yeah, just get to level 7 as quickly and safely as possible. Roll down for 2-star Jayce, 2-star Caitlyn, econ back up to 50 gold, and play as many battle academias as you can. While you're doing that, slow roll down to 50 every single turn, and then wait for a good time to all in. That's often after a stage begins, or if you're close to 3-starring either Jayce or Caitlyn, or if you're low health and you need to win right now. More info can be found by clicking the drop down here if you want to go through full leveling patterns. As for power-ups, Jayce really likes all the stacking early game power-ups, so if you ever get a chance to put a power-up on Jayce during stage 2, definitely do it as quickly as you can, because some of these options are only available during stage 2 and stage 3. So use your early power-ups on Jayce. Caitlyn can get hers later because she just gets generic ones such as Shadow Clone, Mage, and Precision. Those are all pretty good on her. But for Jayce, he really likes Weights, Trickster, Not Done Yet, and 100 push-ups. You could also over 9,000 him. We'll talk more about over 9,000 later on at the end of the video, where I have a special surprise where I talk about how to approach the patch in general starting from stage 1. But for now, if you want to learn a lot more about this comp, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where we have full write-ups for every single comp out there. Before augments for this comp, reroll augments are pretty good. Item augments are good if you need items, because you definitely need to itemize a lot of different people. But the most important thing is to get them to 3-star, and if you can, get artifact items for them. Next comp up we have is going to be the A tier. So Supreme Cell Kai'Sa reroll, still pretty solid. This is going to be a 2-cost reroll, and it's going to be focused around Kai'Sa and Supreme Cells. The build for Kai'Sa is pretty simple. All you want to do is get Infinity Edge plus Guardbreaker, and then either a Spear of Shojin or Rage Blade. That item honestly doesn't really matter. And then you could play a couple of different versions of the rest of your board. So right now we have the Rammus up front as one of the tanks, along with Udyr for Duelist, and then Aatrox for both Heavyweight and Juggernaut. So Rammus can be really good if you're re-rolling a lot or see him early, as you could stack up his monster levels while also stacking up Kai'Sa execute stacks. So essentially, whenever Kai'Sa kills a unit, she gets extra attack damage, and whenever Rammus is on your board and gets some takedowns, he also gets stacks on his monster level. So having them both out early is one really good sign to go for this comp, because they just end up becoming really big monsters. For your secondary carry, it could either be Akali or Darius. If you're close to 3-starring Darius, definitely go for Darius. He could use all sorts of different items. Mainly like the Bruiser package is pretty good. He could also do well with Infinity Edge builds. Worst case, you could even put tank items on him as a 3-star 3-cost. He's still going to do a lot of work there. But if you only have him 2-star, then you want to focus on Akali as your other carry to kind of just be like more of a supportish secondary carry. So what I like to do on her is put red buff or Morello on her. And as she's jumping around everywhere, she's not trying to like kill anything. Obviously, if she does, that's great. But she's kind of just trickling everyone down with the red buff. But to play this comp, you want to do a 2-cost reroll. Essentially, just get to level 6, get Kai'Sa 2-star, stabilize, play her early, play her with items. You definitely benefit a lot more if you get her from the stage 1 orb, or if you also have one slammable item for her, because again, you want to be stacking up her kills as much as possible in the early game. At the start of every game, when you do get her from an orb drop, you want to use your power up on her as soon as possible. If you get over 9,000 or max attack, you can just hard force the comp, as you just get too many stacks and eventually overrun a lot of people towards the later parts in the game. Rammus is pretty decent with any of the generic tank power-ups, but Unstoppable and Body Change are both pretty good options. And then for items for Rammus, just any generic tank items will do, but Even Shroud is obviously going to be a nice option to support your Kai'Sa. And I do want to note that this comp can also be played with mentors. So if you don't want to play with Rammus or you didn't get him, you could just play 4 Supreme Cell, 4 mentors. I'll show you what that looks like right now quickly. So you take out Aatrox and Rammus, and then you just add in Ryze, Kabuko, and Yasuo, and that's going to be your team. This board is a little bit more difficult to get because you need to be level 8 to play it, because you need 4 Supreme Cell and 4 mentors. And you also need to hit Ryze, which is a little tricky because everyone likes putting Ryze on their board. So that's kind of why I prefer the Rammus build instead. Do note, when you play the 4 mentor comp, you don't need to have red buff on Akali. In fact, you don't need any items on her. And the reason why is because Udyr, when 4 mentor is active, he has built-in anti-heal. But yeah, pretty simple comp. You'll know exactly when to play it because you'll get Kai'Sa early and you'll get over 9,000 or max attack on her. Or you have a slammable item on her in the early game and you're just like, all right, that's my sign to go for her. Next comp up we have is Battle Academia. So this comp is going to be just the classic 4-cost comp out there. I think it's probably the best one right now. Yuumi is just very good because she no longer gets killed by Akali, and even before when it was happening, she still could do a lot of work against pretty much every other team out there. And this is also a pretty easy comp to play, I would say, because all you need is a jeweled gauntlet, and then kind of the rest of their items don't matter that much. Like, obviously, every item matters, right? Like, if I could choose perfect items every single game, I would do it. But apart from the jeweled gauntlet, she could play a lot of different items. She could play the build you see here with Gunblade and Striker's Flail, but she could also play with the items Malzahar has, Morello or Void Staff. She could play with Rabadon's Death Cap. She could play with Archangels. There's a lot of different things you could do on her. Pretty much if it gives ability power, it's going to be good on her. If it gives damage amplification, it's going to be good on her. So like Giant Slayer probably also works too. So this comp, apart from the Jeweled Gauntlet, is like very item independent. Like you could pretty much put anything on her. As long as you get 2-star Yuumi, 2-star Leona, you'll be doing fine in most of your games. And then for the support items, I like putting them on Malzahar. He gets both the Morello and the Void Staff. He's just a nice natural choice for that because he applies his abilities to a bunch of different units. And he also casts pretty quickly, unlike Seraphine, who technically has a bigger AoE, but casts so late into the fight that I think she doesn't really matter that much. Even with the 5 Prodigy buff active, I prefer it a lot more on the Malzahar. For tanks, you want to focus on Leona. She can use any tank item, and since Malzahar's holding all your utility, she can go full tank. You don't need any Sunfire Capes on her, you don't need Ionic Sparks on her, but obviously, like, if you have it already, you could put it on her if you really want, because you can't really unbuild an item that you built for the early game. And if you don't have Leona 2, what you can play instead is K'Sante 2-star. While he isn't as tanky as Leona, he gets the job done in case you can't get her. Because sometimes people who are playing the Caitlyn builds or maybe a Katarina reroll build, they're taking some of the Leona, so she's not always available as much as you'd like. Also, I want to cover one of the most common mistakes I see with Battle Academia. So one thing I see a lot of players do is when they're level 8, you'll notice there are 9 units here right now. So at level 8, you can only play 8 units. They tend to play like this, where they hit the early Seraphine and they're like, okay, I'm just going to play 4 frontliners, 4 backliners because I need tanks in the build. And normally, in most cases, this logic would be correct. In a lot of other comps, they really like having a balance between frontline and backline, or damage dealers and tanks. But in this specific comp, it's much better to get 5 Prodigy out there because the bonus you get from it is way too big to give up. So just play something like this and then try to get to level 9 whenever you can, and then put in the K'Sante later. Because 5 Prodigy, it gives you a little bonus on the Prodigy unit's abilities where you can heal an ally for 12% of the damage dealt, which definitely does add up. And it essentially gives you like a fake stronger frontline because you're healing them up. So definitely play the Syndra over the K'Sante at level 8. And then once you can level up, put in K'Sante after that. For the early game, item holders is going to be Ezreal or Syndra. Get them to 2-star. They're going to do wild stuff, and 2-star Ezreal with a 2-star Garen or 2-star Syndra with a 2-star Garen win a lot of early games. So as long as you have any semblance of decent items, you definitely can win streak with this. And then for power-ups, Yuumi is going to want Bullet Hell. That's going to be the best one for her for sure. Honestly, a lot of the different power-ups actually work on her. I'd say there's a pretty big drop-off after Bullet Hell. You could go for like Keen Eye. Any of the generic damage-dealing ones are going to be pretty decent on her. And then for Leona, anything that makes her a super tank is really good. Resistant, for example, is really nice. Resistant is really good on super tanks. It's not good on utility tanks. It's not good on a bit weaker tanks. But for anything that's supposed to be out there for like the super long time, like Poppy's really good with Resistant, for example. Leona, same thing. That's kind of where this power-up really shines. Selfish or Regenerative is also really good because Yuumi has stacking damage. Every time Yuumi casts, her next cast deals more damage and it goes on throughout the whole part of the fight. And Tankzilla is also pretty good for that because anytime you have a long fight, Tankzilla is going to be really good because it triggers pretty late in the fight and then it stuns everyone. So pretty much all the tank power-ups that are really good for long fights, Leona is going to be good for. If you ever do get K'Sante 2-star as your tank before Leona, obviously use the power-up on K'Sante and not Leona and also put the items on him, and then later on you could just swap them over. For the power-ups for K'Sante, just take any generic tank one. You don't have to be too picky about it. I would not take All Out because some people just think because it's a unique one, you always take it. Do not do that for this build because you need him to tank. You don't want him to deal damage. So that's like a little beginner mistake that you should be avoiding there. But next comp up we have is going to be the Duelist Ashe and Colossal Udyr comp. So this is a new comp. It revolves around getting Udyr and the Colossal power up, which is very, very, very strong. It is a requirement as seen down here. And then if you ever get like a decent Duelist start, it's going to be pretty good to go for. So Ashe, same items as she always likes. She likes Kraken Slayer and Rage Blade plus anything. But Udyr with these items ends up tanking a lot and also dealing a respectable amount of damage. If you ever get like Find Your Center as one of the augments, it's going to be really good for this because it literally focuses everything on one single unit. Essentially, all Udyr is a stage 4 and 5 terrorist. He kind of just dominates that part of the game, but in the super late game, he is going to get outscaled by some other teams, and that's very typical for Duelist comps. Normally, Duelist comps, they don't win out unless they get something super crazy going on, but it's generally always been a good comp for top 4ing in pretty much every single set it's been released in. But Udyr up front, put the bruiserish items on him with Stoneplate and Colossal. He's going to take all the aggro, and it pretty much solves a lot of the tank issues that Duelists have. Like other Duelist builds had Rammus being played before, or they only played it with Keepers. But in this new build with Colossal, you kind of take care of all your tank issues by playing the Udyr, so you're not as reliant on those other ways people played Duelists in the past. One other cool thing is that you don't need Udyr 3-star. Like obviously it helps if you are close to Udyr 3, definitely go for it. But if you're pretty far away from it, or if a lot of people are going Juggernauts, which people do play a lot of Juggernauts, you can't realistically go 3-star Udyr. But the good news is that you don't need that to win out. You could just use Udyr as a 2-star unit, save up your gold, go level 9, and go for legendaries after that. But pretty much this is the level 8 board. It's just 6 Duelists plus set plus the Colossal trait, which makes up for 8 units, and that is that. Make sure you get this exact item combo on Ashe and also on Udyr because they are pretty item dependent. Some good item holders in the early game are going to be Naafiri and Gnar. You could go into this build from a Juggernaut start with Gnar, but of course, if you get Duelist early on, you could also use like Kai'Sa or even Gangplank. And then for power-ups, obviously Colossal for Udyr, and then for Ashe, Bullet Hell and Kahuna Huna are going to be great options there. For augments, try to avoid econ augments because you just don't really need them because this comp is so cheap. So focus more on combat augments and item augments so that you get everyone geared up and ready to go. Next build up we have is Juggernaut Ashe. I guess we were just talking about it, right? Like everyone's going to be taking Udyrs because they're playing some form of Juggernauts, either with Ashe or with snipers or Kayle or whoever. But there's nothing really too special about this comp. This is just a generic. I have a lot of frontliners and then I have a Rage Blade backliner, and Ashe is just really good at doing that. This is probably one of the easiest default comps if you build a Rage Blade in the beginning of the game, and all you have to do is get like Kahuna Huna on Ashe. You could do Shadow Clone because there's a lot of room in the backline, and then I like Desperado a lot as well. Like anything that says, oh, if she attacks a lot, do X is going to be good on her because she's going to be stacking up with the Rage Blade and getting a ton of attacks off. And then for your other power up, it could be Set. He just likes anything that makes him tankier. It doesn't really matter what it is, and you just do a fast 8 for this comp. Go for 2-star Ashe, 2-star Set. Once you get that, go level 9, try to look for Zyra. Other legendaries such as Twisted Fate work too, and you are going to be good from there. In the early game, make sure to play around Udyr early on. He gives both Juggernaut and Duelist, so he's very good for this comp, especially if you use like Kai'Sa as an item holder, but you could use Gnar as an item holder too. Gnar is probably like the easiest one because he's a 1-cost unit, so if you get Gnar and Mundo early game with the Rage Blade, that's kind of one good sign to go for like a Juggernaut build. And then if you have none of the reroll comps that need the Juggernauts, you'd go into Ashe, and that's kind of where this shines. So this comp got a lot better because of the Akali nerf. Previously, in the last patch, whenever you played Ashe, Akali just jumps there and kills her right away, and it doesn't matter that you have 6 tanks in the front. If she dies, you lose the game because she's your only source of damage, and yeah, it was just a direct counter to this. So now that that's gone, this comp got like a ton better, so definitely play this now before everyone else kind of gets to it. So next comp up we have is the Crew. So Crew is really good for the same reason as the Juggernaut Ashe comp is good. It's because Akali got nerfed, so Malphite is essentially like a super tank that no one can get past, but unfortunately, if they get onto your Sivir and stuff, then your team comp's kind of useless, right? But Akali can't do that anymore. I mean, she still can get to the backline, she just doesn't kill things as quickly, so it's fine. But you play this comp if you get it early because you absolutely need a 3-star Malphite or Sivir early on. That way you take advantage of the Crew reroll benefits. But just follow a 1-cost reroll pattern for this build. That means not leveling up early. That means rolling down on stage 3-1 at level 4, go down to around 32 gold, and pick up all the Malphites and Sivers along the way. One little trick I like to do when playing this comp is I tend to hold onto all my Ziggs, but if holding a Shen costs me econ, I tend to sell him because since you're rolling so much when you're playing the crew, you'll find 3-star Shen eventually, and definitely faster than you'll find 3-star Ziggs in like 90% of games or 80% of games, I don't know the exact math. So if Shen is going to cost you econ, just sell him because you'll find him later. But focus first on getting a 3-star Malphite or Sivir, and then just roll down to 50 every single turn, level up passively from the crew bonus, and then eventually get 4 crew 3-stars. That way, you get your big power spike and then have fun with the rest of your game. The only thing for items that I think is super important in this comp is going to be a stone plate for Malphite. You pretty much always play Malphite solo in the front line, so getting a stone plate on him is super free value. You also don't have that many tanks in this build, there are just 3 people up there, so stone plate is making a lot more sense. That's like when this item kind of shines. And then in the back line, I'd say Infinity Edge is really required on Sivir. It makes her deal a ton more damage. But the other 2 items, like, yeah, it's nice to have Guard Breaker and Spear Shojin, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, you know? On Ziggs, he's actually pretty flexible with items. He could use all sorts of stuff. He could use attack speed items. He could use AP items. So as long as it does something like that, just build it on him. And then same thing for Twisted Fate, except he really just likes attack speed. His items really don't matter that much. Just generic Twisted Fate items will do. Just make sure in this team comp you get some form of healing reduction. So getting a red buff or Morello is going to be pretty good. If you get a Sunfire Cape, I recommend putting it on Shen, because you want 3 true tank items for Malphite. He just works much better like that because he's your super tank. And essentially this comp is just really, really easy to play, but you don't play it in that many of your games because you need a crew start to go for this, and you also need to be uncontested. So what is a crew start? So if you get Sivir or Malphite early, 2-star at stage 2-1, and you look around, you have decent items for it. Maybe you have like 1 full Malphite item already, or you have like Infinity Edge already, then you can consider going for this. If not, like, I'd probably wait a little bit, maybe wait if you natural a few more Sivirs and Malphites without leveling up, and then once you get it, you can commit to this comp. But if you just have Sivir and Malphite early and you're like, oh, I don't have the best items for it, don't go for it unless you get a lot of copies of them, because it tends to not be worth it. You want to go crew when you get like very optimal circumstances. You could also drop one of the power-ups onto Malphite or Sivir in the early game, and if you get one of the stacking power-ups, such as like over 9,000, then you can go for it. But unless you get one of those situations, like, I would kind of stay away from this comp, because again, it's just situational. It doesn't mean it's bad, it's just situational. For Malphite, he really likes standalone a lot. Standalone's really good because, I mean, like, you have him standalone anyways because he has a stone plate, so that makes perfect sense. Resistance really good for the super tanks, as I talked about before. Pure Heart's pretty decent because you have like a 3-star Shen to support with. So anything that makes him like a super tank is going to be pretty helpful there. I don't really like the utility power-ups on Malphite as much, but sometimes you don't have a choice in the early game for what you get, but you could always re-roll the fruit later on. Next build up we have is going to be Kayle Reroll. So Kayle Reroll is actually pretty decent right now because, again, it's a backline unit that's not being insta-killed anymore. So if you just put all the Juggernauts in the game in front of her, she's going to do really, really, really well. Rageblade, Jeweled Gauntlet, Guard Breaker, nothing much has really changed there. It's the same build as she did before. But one good thing to do with Kayle is you could do the over 9,000 check. Pretty much you should just be doing the over 9,000 check on a lot of different units now. We'll go over that at the end of the video on which exact units to use it on. But if you ever get that, you can just hard force Kayle. But what I like to do with this comp is once you figure out whether you want to play it or not, just make sure you have a lot of econ. Like, pretty much econ's the only thing that matters with this build, because you need to hit both Kayle 3-star and get to level 9. So unless you can make that happen, it's going to be a pretty rough ride for you. So if you see an augment that gives you gold, definitely take it. And also remember that the only unit you really care about is Kayle. So if you're going for Zac 3-star, and Zac 3-star is very good, you probably don't want to waste gold on him if you already have Kayle 3-star. For your main tanks, it could either be Zac, Mundo, or Set, doesn't really matter who. Zac is good if you get him to 3-star because Wraiths heal the lowest health Wraith. Mundo's good because there's a chance you get 3-star Mundo because you're re-rolling for Kayle. And Set's good because if you don't have anyone else 3-star, he's going to be your best bet as your tank because he is a 4-cost unit. But pretty simple comp to play. Actually, it's a little trickier than most reroll comps. Normally when like I talk about reroll comps, they are pretty simple, but in this case, this one is a bit trickier because you need to both reroll and also go to level 9. Next comp up we have is going to be the 6 Sorcerer build. This is one of my favorite builds. For some reason, I just love Karma. I don't know why. It's just really fun to play, and the fights are always so close because you just see the disc come spinning out, and if it kills one thing, it kills 50 things, but sometimes it takes a while to get that first kill, right? But if you're thinking about going Yuumi and you built the Jeweled Gauntlet, but you get a lot of tiers, consider going Karma, because this comp definitely makes great use of a lot of tiers. You could build Spirit Shojin, you could build Blue Buff, you could build Protector's Vow, you could build Void Staff. There's a lot of different things you could build with tier. So when I'm going Yuumi and I get a lot of item drops that are not what I want, I switch into the Sorcerer comp pretty often. In terms of power, like which one's better, Sorcerer or Yuumi, I kind of like Yuumi a little bit more, but that does not mean Sorcerer is bad. It's just a different option that you have. If you hit Karma 2-star very easily without rolling too much for it, you're going to be doing well no matter what. One bonus for this comp is that it's more stable during various parts of the game because you have a lot more carry options. So when you play Yuumi, you only have Ezreal and Syndra, and Ezreal's a lot better, but until you get to Yuumi, you have no one. In this comp, you have Lucian, you have Lux, you have Ahri. So you have a lot of different options you have for backline item holders before you get to Karma. So it makes the transition a little bit smoother than it normally would be for other comps, because once you 2-star someone stronger, you swap the items and the power-ups over to them, and you're able to maintain win streaks or save HP in a much easier way. But for Karma, her best items are going to be Jeweled Gauntlet, Spirit Shojin, and the Guardbreaker. If you ever get a artifact item, Blighting Jewel is really good on her. Deathfire Grasp is good on her. Pretty much any of the ones that give AP are going to be good on her. For Gwen, she's going to be your utility item holder. She's going to hold the Morello and the Void Stab, and she's really good with Edge of Night because she makes herself a little vulnerable, so the Edge of Night really helps her a ton. Main tank is going to be Swain. It could also be Jarvan. Sometimes I hit Jarvan 2-star before I hit Swain 2-star. I don't know why, but that's been happening to me a bunch recently. So sometimes I power up my Jarvan and put all the items on him, and if I run out of swaps or whatever, or reforgers for my fruit, I kind of just leave it on him, because it honestly doesn't matter too much who's the main tank. They both are like decently not the best tanks, but they're what you got, so it is what it is. You also do get the Mighty Mech in this build though, so that one also helps you out a little bit. But for power-ups, Efficient and Mage are probably the best ones on Karma. Shadow Clone's a fun one to use too, because you get an additional Sorcerer trigger because you get another Karma. And then for Gwen, Hemorrhage and Needlework are both really good on her. If you ever get 2-star Gwen, you pretty much take off the power-up from one of your tanks and move it onto her. And in the meantime, for Swain, if you're using him as your power-up, round 2 is really good, and also Body Change is pretty nice as well because it gives the tankiness to both him and Jarvan, and it helps Jarvan cast his first cast a lot better because sometimes he dies without doing it. But yeah, this is just like one of those standard level 8 comps. You go there, go for Karma 2-star, level up to level 9, get Gwen, get a huge power spike, get Gwen 2, ideally get second place or win the game. Next comp up we have is going to be Protector Smolder. Smolder's really good as a over 9,000 check, but pretty much all you do is get Smolder early. Like, you want it early in stage 2 because Monster Trainer, they just get stronger every time you're in a PvP round. So I'd say latest time to get Smolder is maybe stage 2-5. Anything after that might be a little too late to start stacking him unless you just win every single round, because his level up is based on how many takedowns he can get. So unless you have perfect items for him, I'd say latest stage 2-5. Ideally in stage 2-1, 2-2, or 2-3. And if you ever get artifacts, this comp does get bumped up a tier, so that's kind of nice to know. Some good artifacts on Smolder are going to be Flicker Blade, Fishbones, Manazane, and Crown of Demacia. In the meantime, just build Infinity Edge and Spirit Shojin. Third item doesn't really matter too much. It could almost be anything. You could also do Infinity Edge and Rage Blade. I'd say the only like required item is going to be the Infinity Edge. The other two, like, you do want good items, don't get me wrong. Like, obviously you always want good items, but there really isn't an astronomical difference after you get the Infinity Edge. Like, the other items, they could literally just be anything. Doesn't really matter too much. For your tanks, Neeko is going to be main tank if you get her to 3-star, which you often will because they're both 3-cost units, so you level up to level 7, do a 3-cost reroll pattern. But if not, you could also use Cassante as a 2-star Cassante as your main tank. Just generic tank items up front. Make sure you have some form of armor shred in this comp, and one good news about this comp is that you don't need the burn effect because Smolder already has burn and anti-heal built into him. And he even does have armor pen built into him, but that's only at level 30, which does take a while to get to. So if you build Even Shroud in the early game, just build it, you know. The value you'll get from it in the early game and the mid game is too much to pass up on, and it also does stack with Smolder's effect, so it's not like you waste an item in the late game. But pretty simple build here. If you have over 9,000, amazing, even better. But if you can't get that, Efficient or Mage is are both really good on Smolder. Next build up we have is going to be the Soul Fighter Samira Gwen build. Soul Fighters are actually pretty decent right now. So before, the edgelords were taking your Samiras, but now no one's taking her. So that means you are free to go her. No one's going to contest you on this. There aren't too many Sorcerer players either, so Gwen's pretty open season as well. So if you ever get like a Soul Fighter emblem or tournament favorites, a Soul Fighter augment, definitely hard force this comp because it actually is pretty solid. It uses all sorts of different items because Gwen is AP, Samira is AD, and Set is a tank. Viego is also conveniently an extremely good item holder for Gwen because they're both short range mages, and pretty much the most important item in this build is going to be the gloves. So glove is really good for Samira because Infinity Edge I'd say is pretty mandatory, and then Guard Breaker is just the best complementary item. Gwen likes Jeweled Gauntlet, so if you compare Gwen's build here to the Sorcerer build, in the Sorcerer build we have her as like the utility person because Morello's good because she hits the whole board. Void Staff's good because she hits the whole board and reduces the magic resistance for Karma to shred everyone up. But if we look at the way Soul Fighter is being played, it's a little bit different because you deal both physical and magic damage, so the penetration effects aren't as important. I'd say unless you get Sky Piercer. Sky Piercer is pretty good in this comp. That's the one which gives both armor and magic reduction, so that works out really well for this build because you deal both types of damage. But really, you just need some form of anti-heal. You need to hit the team because getting to 8 Soul Fighter can be a little bit tricky. And then your late game is obviously going to be Gwen mixed with the Yone. So if you want to look and see what this comp could look like with an emblem, you could drop one of the Soul Fighters in the back, probably going to be Callista, and then drop in maybe like a Braum or something like that. Braum gives Bastion, Braum's also a legendary, and he also does pretty well with items if you have them extra. So before you get Yone, you want to play Edgelord to complement the Samira, so it could be literally any of them. Maybe Shen works out pretty decently, but it doesn't really matter. Once you get Yone, you replace whoever you have with a 1-star Yone. And then Gwen gets buffed up already because Lux and Gwen are both trait twins, which means that they're both Soul Fighter and Sorcerer at the same time. Set also has a trait twin with Nefiri, so this comp is pretty static. Like, you can't change too many of the units, so just play whatever you see on the board here. Like, sometimes when I am recommending my guides to other people, I'm like, oh, like, you don't have to copy everything champion for champion, right? But in this one, it is pretty static because you need to just play all the Soul Fighters, but they also give themselves like complementary traits, so it is a bit easier to play than some of the other comps out there. But just fast 8 and fast 9 for this. Play it with a lot of early swords and gloves. For power-ups, Gwen really likes Hemorrhage or Needlework. Dark Amulet also works decently. And then for Samira, On the Edge is pretty good. Attack Expert, pretty much anything that gives her more damage is going to work out fine. For Set, Tankzilla, Resistant, Round 2, all going to be solid options. Like, any of the generic tank options honestly are fine. Like, I wouldn't stress too much about re-rolling fruits in this build. Next build up we have is going to be Star Guardians. This is another one of those vertical comps where you just go really deep into a trait, so it's very similar to the Soul Fighter build. And in this build, it works a little bit differently. The way Star Guardians work is that essentially each Star Guardian you add, you get an additional bonus. So what ends up happening is that this comp is really, really good if you are able to give a lot of power to your team. So if you have a lot of items, that's one way to do it. If you have combat augments, that's another way to do it. And if you have this other augment called quality over quantity, that's probably like the best augment for this comp. What it does is essentially gives all your units a radiant item. And it works out really nicely because you could use all sorts of different items, and it makes each and every one of the Star Guardians actually do something. So there's always one trait every single set that uses that augment really, really well, and it just happens to be this set, it's going to be Star Guardians. But apart from that, it's pretty straightforward. You want to focus on your forecast, so you typically build around Jinx. She's going to be an attack damage user, so Infinity Edge, Guard Breaker, Last Whisper, Rage Blade, Kraken Slayer, all those items work on her. I don't really stress too much about them. I just slam whatever I can in the early game whenever I am going Star Guardian. And then you are obviously going to use Xayah as the item holder for that because she is another attack damage champion on this team. And then if you have ability power items, use Syndra and Ahri to hold those. And then eventually Ahri can even move her items over onto Seraphine. And then for tank items, you're going to focus that onto Poppy. But for forecasts, like Poppy and Jinx, can't go wrong with that. Focus on them when you do a fast 8 on your roll downs. And if you can, you could go for Ahri 3-star if you see a lot of copies of her. It's easier if no one's playing Sorcerers. Unfortunately, a lot of people are, or some people are, I should say. So getting 3-star Ahri is a bit trickier than it was in the past. But if you have a lesser duplicator from like random loot that you got, it's definitely going to be something to consider. For utility items, I like putting them on my backline just because Poppy is supposed to be like a super tank, so I tend to just put all the real tank items onto her. For power-ups, I really like the Star Sailor power-up, but as we talked about before, with team comps that deal all sorts of damage, such as magic and physical, if you get Sky Piercer, it is pretty decent on Jinx. Jinx hits a nice AoE, so she applies it really easily. But for me, my personal favorite is going to be Star Sailor for both Poppy and Jinx. 2 Star Sailor makes them heal each other based off of the damage they do, and the first upgrade to Star Sailor improves the effect of their Star Guardian trait, which is really nice to have. I'm not going to say Star Sailor is absolutely mandatory, but it is one of the reasons why I like playing this comp. But there are a lot of other different things you can take. Poppy can take any of the generic tank ones. Ahri really likes Mage. I'd say that's like one of the key callouts there because she ends up dealing so much damage that the damage reduction from the Mage buff doesn't really mean anything because she gets a cast twice instead, so you get double the value. And then Seraphine works with a lot of different things as well, but only if she is a 2-star unit. But very simple comp to play, just play all the Star Guardian units plus Kabuko. You could also put in Braum later on, but very simple comp to play and pretty powerful if you get the right start for it. Next build up we have is going to be Katarina Reroll. Katarina Reroll, not going to lie guys, it's a little bit more difficult to play because all the Caitlyn players, there's going to be guaranteed one Caitlyn Jayce player every single game. They don't play Katarina technically, so once they hit Leona and Yuumi, they sell their Katarina, but in their early to mid game, they're going to be holding onto your Katarina, so it's going to be a little more difficult to hit Katarina 3-star. And you never know, you might face someone who just sees you going for Katarina and they just want to grief you anyways. It could be annoying, it might be suboptimal from them, but I don't want people getting hurt because of other people's bad play. But I just do want to mention that it does happen sometimes, but this comp is still good if you get the right conditions for it. So what are the right conditions? It's going to be getting a Radiant item or an Artifact item. If you ever get Dawn Core, it's really good on Katarina. There are a couple of other ones that work out really well too, such as Zhonya's Paradox, Deathfire's Grasp. I'm surprised Wit's End doesn't do that well. I thought it would do better, but according to the data, it's not that great. The reason why is because damage heals the holder for 35% of damage dealt. So it's kind of like a replacement for Hand of Justice, even though Wit's End is more of a auto attack item, which she doesn't really auto attack that much, but the heal effect is there. But where she really shines is through Radiant Hand of Justice. Radiant Hand of Justice is absolutely bonkers on her if you look at it. It's by far the best Radiant item on her. Like Radiant Strikers, like her normal build is going to be Edge of Night, Striker's Flail, and Hand of Justice. And if you look at the average placement difference between Striker's Flail and Edge of Night compared to Hand of Justice, you'll see that there's like such a humongous difference. It's actually bonkers, right? It's just by far her best item because it gives both the damage buff and the healing buff, and it just works out really well. The reason why Artifact and Radiant items are so good on Katarina though is because she's the only unit that matters. No one else matters in this team, so you just want to power her up as much as you can, and Radiant items are the best way to do that. Speaking of powering up, for power-ups, I like Dark Amulet a lot. I think that one is going to be the best one because you just want her to scale up throughout the fight, and that is one easy way to do that. You could also do over 9,000 if you get it at the start. Pretty much like if there's any reroll comp out there, if you use over 9,000 on the unit you're trying to reroll, it's going to be good. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we're playing the game because it just gives too many stats, so it's going to be worth it no matter what. But for secondary carry, you could do Yuumi. Getting Void Staff Morello on her is really, really good. You could also do Red Buff. If worst case for magic penetration, you could put an Ionic Spark on Leona, but it's generally a lot worse than Void Staff. If you have 3-star Rakan, you could use Rakan as main tank also. Pretty much you just want to do the Moses positioning again. That way Katarina needs to focus fewer units before she gets to the backline. And yeah, pretty simple comp to play. Make sure you play Executioner at all times. It's going to be Callista in the early game and then eventually Ryze later on. I kind of skip Senna. I don't really play Senna. I'd rather just keep the Callista in there and save my gold instead. But once you get Ryze, auto replace Callista with 1-star Ryze and keep the Executioner in and then add as many Battle Academia as you can. Next build up we have is going to be Jhin Reroll. Jhin Reroll is back. He did suck in the previous patch because of you know who, but this is just a simple 2-cost reroll. focus around Juggernaut. So you want to put the fruits on Jhin and Mundo. Jhin likes Rage Blade, Giant Slayer, Infinity Edge. Mundo likes any of the regular tank items. And you don't really need a secondary carry in this comp, but if you do, you could do Gnar in the early game and then Lee Sin eventually later on. I only play this comp when I have Artistic KO. Some people are doing this new build where they do Spirit Sword. I've not tried that build personally, but from what I hear, it also is pretty viable. But I'm more of just like a old school type of player, so I'm just gonna stick to the Artistic KO for now until there's like a really strong reason to do otherwise. Essentially, it just empowers his 4th shot to bounce when it overkills, which is really nice because he ends up overkilling everything. So it just allows him to take advantage of the Rage Blade stacking a lot more than all the other power-up options he has. He is very power-up dependent though, so like don't play him without Spirit Sword or Artistic KO. The way Spirit Sword works is that it improves his critical strike chance, and then attacks that do critically strike also deal bonus magic damage, which is kind of cool because it makes all his non-4th shots more valuable. So one makes the 4th shot more valuable, the other makes everything else more valuable. It's just funny how that kind of works out, but very simple build. It's just one of those generic Juggernauts in the front, some ramping unit in the back, and nothing too complicated there. Just make sure you play Wraith and Sniper at all times. Prioritize that over putting in as many Juggernauts as possible. But obviously, if you can, put in 6 Juggernauts once you level up and have enough room. Next build up we have is going to be the B tier. So Luchador Volibears definitely took a hit. You don't need to do this positioning that we see now. Before, you get like a free jump when you do this, but now it's safe to just put him up front because he doesn't get that free jump anymore. But item build's still the same. You want Infinity Edge, Guardbreaker plus Deathblade, Samira in the back with Shojin, Guardbreaker, and Infinity Edge. And then you just play either Set or as many edgelords as possible with this comp, and just have them carry. Like essentially Volibear does a lot of carrying on his own. Samira jumps in, does a bunch of AoE. It's pretty nice. I say concentrate more on Volibear than Samira. But for power-ups, Volibear, he really likes Serious Slam. That's my favorite. Like, seriously, I'm gonna slam you if you do not pick that power-up. If you don't get that, like Stretchy Arms is pretty good, Thrill Seekers, Tiny Terror, Final Boss, all decent. Samira, she can use all sorts of stuff. I kind of use her as more of a supportish unit sometimes, so you could put the armor reduction one on her if you don't have that effect, but any of the ones that boost her damage are going to do fine. And then if you do have Yone, just give him something that can help him survive a little bit longer. Like Tiny Terror is probably my favorite one on him, but only switch from Samira to Yone if you get Yone 2-star. If Yone's 1-star, even if he has 3 items, the fruit is going to be better used on Samira. Honestly, none of the units really matter apart from Volibear. He's going to be the primary carry still, even though he's going to be nerfed a bit. This comp does get better if you do get artifact items, because whenever you have a melee carry, they typically use artifacts a lot better because they just have a lot more available to them than other units. But the tricky part about this build is making it to 4 Luchador. So until you get Braum, you're hard stuck at 3 Luchador unless you have an emblem. So it can be a little bit tricky to play. That's why at level 8, I recommend playing Set. Set is really good as like a stabilizer, and he also holds all your tank items because you can't get all these crit and sword items that we see here, right? Like the builds I'm showing here, they're mainly Pandora's items builds. Like if you get perfect items, go for this. But honestly, Volibear can use a lot of different item options. Like I've seen him use Kraken Slayer, I've seen him use Rage Blade, I've seen him use a bunch of other stuff. Because realistically speaking, you can't get 4 gloves. Like everyone's going for gloves because Striker's Flail is the best item in the game right now. So getting 2 sets of IE plus Striker's Flail on both Volibear and Samira, it's probably not happening, right? Getting a Deathblade with 2 Infinity Edges and a Shojin, that's 5 swords that you need. Like probably not happening. So while we try to get perfect items, like they're not always going to happen, right? That's why we always have random tank items, and Set's just a perfect holder for them. Set also gives Soul Fighter to Samira, which is pretty nice if you're using her as your primary carry. But yeah, Fast 8 comp got nerfed a bit, still playable, just not OP. I'm just going to talk briefly a bit about the rest of the comps out there. Mighty Mech, 7 Mighty Mech actually is viable. I wouldn't say it's OP, but it's a very affordable comp because you're running Aatrox, Gangplank, and Lucian, just because it's one of those vertical comps. So if you do happen to get like an early Yone and you have like some Mighty Mechs to begin with, like yeah, sure, go for 7 Mighty Mech. You're not going to win out on a lot of games unless you go level 9 and play a lot of legendary units, but it is one vessel to kind of get you there. Sometimes a comp isn't used for like the super late game. Sometimes you can just use them temporarily. Darius reroll, this one is just going to be a Darius build, but it's mainly going to be played in Kai'Sa, so I kind of want to keep them separate because even though they play the same exact units, it's a lot different because this one's focused on Darius, the other one's focused on Kai'Sa. And don't get me wrong, Darius 3-star is good no matter what, but in the other comp, he's mainly good because Kai'Sa is good, you know? All out Cassante, like, yeah, I don't know if there's a reason to play this comp because Akali got nerfed so much. This comp was already kind of not that great in this recent patch, so I would kind of avoid this for now, just because Akali did get nerfed in addition to not being that great to start with. Sniper Varus, this is a great fast 9 board if you get Varus 2-star. Lee Sin 2-star, play some Juggernauts. It's great when you have a Juggernaut start. You could also play it with Wraith, but there might be better things to go for. Essentially, this is just a check if you have 2-star Varus or not, and it's just super high rolly. You need to fast 9 for this. Duelist reroll, there's a better Duelist build out there with the Colossal on the Udyr. Maybe that works with reroll Viego and someone else. It definitely can't be Gangplank. Gangplank's way too weak right now after his nerf, so I'm not too sure how viable this one is. Actually, no, I am sure. It's not that viable. If you are playing 6 Duelists, play around the Ashe and the Colossal Udyr. Next build up, we have his Fast 9 Gnar. Seen better days. This is just a generic Juggernaut frontline and Rageblade Gnar backline. It doesn't carry as hard as it used to, but definitely still viable. You just can't play it every game and only do it if you actually are able to Fast 9. But yeah, that's pretty much like, yeah, Mentor GP got nerfed too much. Akali somewhere, yeah, Akali's all the way at the bottom. Like, it's such a bad comp. Let me show you the stats on Akali right now. If we go to stats, champions, and then we type in like 4 for 4 costs, like, wow. She is the worst average placement, and is she the lowest played? No, Jinx is the lowest played. Jinx and Poppy are the lowest played, but Akali's right after that. So she's one of the lowest played champions, and she also has bad win rate. I guess she's kind of close to Poppy and Jinx, right? But considering that she used to be one of the most played champions, I guarantee you a lot of the games that she has is because people forgot or didn't know that there was a D patch, because they don't really announce it in the client. Even one of my friends, he's like Grandmaster right now, and he logged in today, played a game, and he's like, why'd I lose with Akali? And then people were laughing at him because like he didn't know that it got de-patched because he was away yesterday. So unlucky for him. Like, I guarantee you a lot of the Akali games out there are just because people played it because they didn't know she was nerfed. But as like a little quick note, if you are doing an over 9,000 check, like I'd say priority is going to be Kai'Sa, Smolder, Katarina, and Kayle. You could also add Jayce in there, but with Jayce, he likes some of the other ones a bit more, such as like weights. I forgot if we talked about it, but yeah, weights, Trickster, not done yet, 100 push-ups. So pretty much if you get over 9,000 on any of these champions, just hard force them. It's going to be good enough for most cases. And yeah, Volibear and Akali nerfed. That means play Jayce and Kate, play some reroll, play some Yuumi, try this new Ashe build before everyone's playing it, and let me know how it goes. But if you want to check out the full write-up to this guide, head on over to bunnymuffins.lol/meta, and if you want to learn more about how to just like play TFT, check out the fundamentals guide. It's on the website, but we also do have the video on the channel somewhere, so check that out as well. It literally covers everything you need to know about TFT in terms of like actually playing, because I notice a lot of people don't actually do this, even though some of these might be obvious to some. There might be something in here that you like either forgot or need help on doing more consistently. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.